So, I want to talk about how to establish a relationship and how to develop your morals. So, when you're developing these morals, when you're articulating right and wrong, and the rules that can be applied to whatever situation you may encounter, you have to make sure that there are no contradictions within your beliefs. So, if there is a contradiction, you're either wrong about both things or you're definitely wrong about something. So, it's about logical consistency. When it comes to the subjective versus objective stuff. So there are objective truths that cannot be they can't be contradicted. So stuff like mathematics, stuff like the definitions of words and statements. And then there are some situations in which we know the objective moral decision that should be made, such as like risk management scenarios, like certain concepts that are objectively right or wrong that cannot be contradicted. So we have the objective truths that we cannot contradict, and then aside from that, the subjective stuff that we don't have a complete explanation for that comes down to feelings. We have to make sure that these subjective rules do not contradict the objective truths that we know, and that the subjective rules are also consistent with each other. So there can't be any contradictions between the objective and the subjective beliefs that you have. And even if you feel like you're being logically consistent, it doesn't mean that you are. So like you could think that your subjective beliefs are logically consistent and they align with the objective truths that you know, and that you're being a good person, but you might be wrong and you might be being a bad person. Okay, so be wary of that. Okay, just because you think you're doing good doesn't mean that you are. Doesn't mean that you are a good person. Okay, just because you say you have good intentions doesn't mean that the intention is actually good. You're just putting the label of good on it. So be wary of that. And if you become aware that you were doing something bad, you need to recognize that you were a bad person at that moment. You need to change it. Look back on it, say, yeah, I was a bad person. I thought something bad was good and I was bad. And anybody that does that stuff is a bad person. You don't make excuses for evil, okay? Because if people are just continuously making excuses for everything, life is meaningless. There's no accountability. There is no good and evil. Okay, there is no love. So it just comes down to like, maybe you never articulated the evil of the act that you did, but you should have known better. Like you should have followed the proper feeling or like instinct or whatever. Okay. So you need to apply responsibility to yourself. Even if you didn't like articulate something, you should have known better. You should have had the proper feeling. Like you should have followed the proper feeling. So you develop your morals and you find like-minded people. And just because you both agree on everything doesn't mean that you're both right. Okay, you could both be bad people thinking you're being good or whatever, same kind of thing. But all we can do is try. Like, it's not an excuse, but it's all that we can do. You understand? So like we come from apes, we are apes, and we're still developing our ability to explain things, and we rely on feelings, subjectivity, and we could be doing the wrong thing, but we should have followed the proper feeling, and we need to be accountable. And even if other people agreed with our feelings, it doesn't mean they were right or you were right. Okay, you need to hold everybody accountable, and you need to keep trying to be good, but condemn bad decisions whether you articulated it or not. So Yeah, finding like-minded people, making sure there are no contradictions within your beliefs, developing boundaries, like the qualifications of what makes somebody good or evil. Okay, you need to give people like wiggle room for mistakes, like if somebody gets something wrong on a math test or something, it doesn't mean they're evil. Or if they thought something was healthy, like they thought white bread was healthy or something instead of wheat bread for some kind of misinformation or something, but they had the proper intention of being healthy, like you don't consider them evil. Okay, you need wiggle room for mistakes, but you have boundaries of like ideological boundaries that make somebody compatible or not. Somebody that allows you to say that that's a good person or not. And that's the basis of any kind of relationship. They have to be morally qualified. And then you can talk about like the survival benefits of this relationship. But it starts with like, can I consider you a good person or not? Then we can talk about, do I want to spend time with you based on survival and responsibility and stuff. So to help with these boundaries, I wrote a list of some boundaries. So savagery, that's a boundary. If somebody's a savage, they're not a good person. If they're unhealthy, like if they don't place any importance on their health, if they're suicidal, or they don't care about health, okay, that's a boundary. If they think that life is meaningless, that's a boundary. They're not capable of love. If they think that things are deterministic and, therefore meaningless, okay. If they have a reprobate mind, okay, if they're just like reactive and they don't think about things and they don't try to be, you know, they don't try to be responsible. If they think that everything's subjective, if they deny the existence of a true good and evil, that even if we don't have the explanation of what's good or evil in this scenario, that the explanation does exist. Okay, so like they have to believe that there is an explanation of, what is good or what is evil in a scenario, even if we're not able to explain it at that moment. So they need to believe that good and evil does exist. Okay, they can't just think that everything's subjective and all that nonsense. That's just meaningless. They need to believe in the concept of responsibility, of love and stuff. They can't deny the necessity of judgment. They can't be like, you can't judge people and all this nonsense. Okay, we need to judge. That's what love is. Love is a judgment. So, that kind of stuff. They can't deny the free will of living things. So, like saying that things aren't capable of being good and that they don't have the ability to make a choice and stuff. Because then they're just saying that thing's meaningless. And, how is that living thing supposed to feel towards this person that's saying that they're meaningless and stuff, and like that they're not capable of good, and that they're not going to offer any kind of rights and stuff. So that could go into like racism or sexism or whatever, if people start saying like, all of this group of people are incapable of being good, all these poor people or whatever, like, so, or the rich people are too tempted and they can't be good or something like. They have to try to avoid contradictions. Okay, they have to be trying to be logically consistent, intellectually honest, open to correction. So those are some boundaries. That's just the nature of how relationships work and how your morals are developed. You have objective truths, you can't contradict those. Your subjective beliefs also can't have contradictions. You need to find like-minded people. And you need to hope you're not doing the wrong thing, and don't make excuses if you were being bad. So that's pretty much it for developing your morality and establishing relationships.